In this video, we're going to go over worksite placement in JTED. We'll be covering how to add and edit worksites and employers and adding worksite placement to customers' career plans. So we'll take a look at our customer here. We've been working with in these videos, Dave and Merritt. And in the career plan, let's see, here's the page that I want. In the career plan, we have three services that can be found under employment. And so the worksite placement and the services, they tie to, the customer's employment. And these are the three services that have a different template for services than, what we've seen in our previous videos. Um, that just have the dates, the status, maybe the average weekly hours. But if we go into one of these services, let's say the transitional job service. So we do have our, status default and service provider, dollar value of service, and earned credentials. These three over here, these are going to be, the same as what we've seen before. But the status looks a little bit different. So we see, the goal that we need to add or select to, put this service in. So let's say, um, let's say this first one here. And initially, depending if you were in round one, you may have some, organizations here, but if you're new to JTED round two, you're likely not going to find, anything populating in this table. And so we need to add the employment, worksite, and job that we can tie this customer to because that information that we enter will populate in here. So what I mean by that is we'll need to go to, in order to get an entry into this table, we'll need to go to worksite placement. And that is this icon right here, just to the left of reports and to the right of groups and user management. So we'll open this up in a new tab here. And for the project, we'll select JTED, IT provider. We'll select JTED South 2. And then we can just click filter here. So we can see that for JTED, we don't have any grantees, or sorry, we don't have any worksite placements entered. So we'll go ahead and click this button to add employer and worksite. Looks like I might have gotten started on one, but didn't finish it. So, but to add one, we'll click this add new employer button. And you can see we have, select employer, select worksite, and add worksite placement information. So step one, select employer or enter information for a new employer. So we can enter in, let's say, employer 11824. And there's a checkbox here for is this employer the worksite? And what we mean by that is, the employer information that we're entering here, which will include, the address information, is that the location that the customer will be working at. So one example I like to use is, if it's different, the employer could be, the Parks District, and the work site itself where the customer will be working is one specific park. So maybe this is, the employer, we have, the administrative office, address here, but in the work site, the address or, location of where that customer will specifically be working. So that's the difference between, employer and work site. And if we do check the box, is this employer the work site? Then once we fill out this information, we'll go straight to this add worksite placement information. So let's see, this is that's a placeholder text here for the description. We can enter the URL if we'd like to, along with the NAICS code. And the way this will work is we can click this here, pull up a search box here, And we can start to enter a keyword that will, offer suggestions here, or we can go into just pull back the full list just by clicking the search without entering anything in here. And then if we need to filter it down even further, we can do so by entering text into that second search bar there. So let's just say this one here. And so the code populates in here, and then the job title tied to that code will appear here. And if we need to, tweak the language here, we can certainly do that there. So after that, we'll enter the phone number. If there's a second phone number, we can add that in here. Add the address information. And then the primary contact for the employer. And once we enter the primary contact's name, their job title, their email, and their phone number, we can click this next step here. And so if we do that, we'll be taken to this page where we can add a new worksite. And so it says select worksite or enter information because, maybe it's one employer that you're working on, but you need to add, like in the case of a parks district, multiple work sites to it. You could add, park 1, park 2, park 3, and so forth. So let's see. So we'll need to add a new one, and it's the same information that we entered on the previous page. So let's say location A. This is for the actual location the customer will be working at. Let's give it a different address. And so we'll enter, again, the contact information, the name, title, email, and phone number for the primary contact for the work site. If we need to go back a step, we can. That would take us to step 1 for the employer, but we'll continue by clicking next step. And then here, we'll add the information about the job. So the first part is entering the SOC code that best represents the job for this worksite placement. So we'll click this look up SOC codes, and this will be similar to our makes search here, where we can start to enter text and get some recommendations there, or just come in here and click search and search through this by entering a text into the second bar here. So we'll click select once we find it. You can see the SOC code populates here as the job title as well. And again, we can update this as necessary. And then, so once we update the title, we can add in the description here. And then for employment type, we can select any of the following: work-based learning, job shadowing, work experience, internship, on-the-job training, permanent employment, apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship, and job site practicums. Depending on the selection here, let's see, I believe it is, yeah, okay. So we have, the fields for hourly wage for placement, total number of openings, and estimated length in weeks. And if we do select the option that this is permanent employment, that estimated number of weeks, that disappears. So let's say it is a work experience, hourly wage for placement. I'm entering that number here, the number of openings, and the estimated length in weeks. So once we have that information entered, we'll click finish. And then we'll see right at the top here, but let me filter this down so we can see this. So we have, in our table, JTED, here's the grantee that it's with, the employer information, the work site, the job, the number of openings, and full-time and part-time positions filled. And so if we click employer, that was the first item we added here. If we needed to make changes to the employment information, we could. If we needed to add additional contacts, we can add them here by clicking that add contact button if there's more than one contact for the employer. And similarly, if we click Worksite, again, we can update this information as needed or add additional contacts or take out, if let's say Jason was no longer with this, Worksite and employer, we can, remove Jason there. And if we go back to job here, this was the one we selected. If we click this, it'll take us back to, what we updated. Maybe instead of work experience, it was actually on the job training or permanent employment. We can go back and edit that information there. So if we go back to our service here for transitional jobs, actually, let me refresh this page. We'll need to do that in order for the new listing to appear here. So we'll select the goal for which the service should be a part of. And let's find the worksite that we added here. And let's see. Well, I'm not sure why this isn't pulling. This is the test environment, and sometimes things don't always run perfectly, but we'll take a look at a different one here. So let's say this 3723 employer. So as we can see in our worksite placement, we have this entry here. And we have, one opening we filled for. So let's see. So let's select this button here to add, and it'll take us down the page a little bit. And then we'll see that information that we entered in the worksite placement entry for employer and the job information that's pulling through here. And so from here, we can update several different fields, minimum wage for placement, the hourly wage for placement, subsidized wage or training wage match. So you can't update these grayed out fields here, but position type will say full-time. And so we have full-time and part-time, and that's going to connect to these two columns over here. So we have for and full-time. So let's say part-time. So say part-time, the status will say started. We are now in employment. So the start date is, let's see, how about today? The 8th. And the plan due date, I think we said about 12 weeks or so. So let's estimate here and say the end of January. And the average weekly hours. So if we say part-time, let's see, how about 20? And then we'll do a case note here to update the customer service, add the case note. Oh, yeah, we got to select a goal here, meant to do that. And the hourly wage must be greater or equal to the minimum wage. So let's go ahead and update that to equal. And let's try updating this again. And looks like it's loading. Okay, there we go. So it has been updated. All right, and so if we go back to our worksite placement here, and this is the second entry here, click filter. And so we'll see the total number of openings here went from 1 to 0. Full-time stayed the same, but our part-time positions filled 1. That was the customer we just added in here. And so if we click 1, we can see David Merritt, our test customer, is pulling through here. And so that's how you can update or add and edit work sites and employers and the employment information, and how to make that connection between worksite placement and customers on their career plans page.